Alright class, this is our last PowerPoint or video in reviewing for our 4.5 week test. The Gilded Age and the AFL, or the American Federation of Labor. So the Gilded Age is a period after the Civil War. The term was coined by Mark Twain. This picture is from the cover of the book The Gilded Age of Today, written by Mark Twain. Gilded actually means to be covered thinly in gold. In class, we talked about the gold foil around chocolate coins that you might get around St. Patrick's Day or Halloween, and how that while the chocolate is something that we like, the gold that it looks like it might be is far more valuable. And as kids, we don't see that, but we're trying to get the understanding that it looks really good on the outside, but it's not near as good on the inside. This was a time where wealthy individuals, called captains of industry, became very rich while a majority of everyone else did not. We have a bunch of individuals, and you have skilled workers who are working and working and working. They're working long hours for very little pay. And then you have these captains of industry who own their companies who are making out like bandits. They are they're owning more land and more properties than anybody in history. And quite a few of these people that we'll talk about on the next page are going to be in the top 20 richest individuals in all of history. This era is going to look really good on the outside looking in, like that gold-covered chocolate, but upon a closer look, there were far more poverty and problems than wealth. These captains of industry, these wealthy industrialists, included J.P. Morgan, who was into banks, Andrew Carnegie, who did steel, and J.D. Rockefeller, who did banks and all kinds of different stuff with oil as well. So these individuals had more money, and some of them were in the top 20 richest people to have ever lived. Not in just the United States, in the entire world to ever live in front of the entire population of the world that's ever been. Those are those individuals. As we moved into that, we're going to see the problem of poverty and working too many hours for very little pay is going to try to be addressed. And it's going to be addressed by the AFL. Now, the AFL is a labor union, but it's not the only labor union. There were many before it, but it's going to become the prominent and the one that everybody's going to look for. The AFL stands for the American Federation of Labor. It is a labor union made up of many smaller labor unions. So he's actually going to have labor unions, and they're going to come together, and you're going to have a big labor union made up of smaller labor unions. A labor union is a group of similarly skilled individuals who come together to try to get better pay and working conditions. For example, there's a couple of different teachers' unions. There's the TEA, which is the Tennessee Education Association, and the NEA, which is the National Education Association. Those are teachers' unions. So people who are part of the TEA and the NEA are teachers, so they're similarly skilled. With the Gilded Age being in full swing, many captains of industry were only worried about money. They attempted to make their workers work long hours for little pay. In response to this, workers who worked the same skilled jobs, cigar makers, hat makers, teachers, would come together to try to better their group by getting better pay, better working conditions, and hopefully shorter hours. A gentleman named Samuel Gompers was a cigar maker by trade, brought together many smaller labor unions to form the AFL. The AFL were groups of skilled workers who wanted to pass an 8-hour workday, wanted equal pay, and wanted to eventually abolish child labor. We really haven't talked about child labor in class. We will in the coming weeks right after the Spanish-American War. So because of his work with the AFL, Samuel Gompers was seen as the unofficial spokesperson for the labor movement. He served as president of the AFL every year from its formation to his death, except for 1 year. Overall, these labor unions had a positive impact on the Gilded Age, as workers had a means to fight back against employers who were unethical and treated them unfairly. So you have the Gilded Age, you have the two sides. You have the captains of industry who are making all the money, and then you have the labor unions of the people who are not making that money and have horrible working conditions. Well, captains of industry are going to be the gilded, the nice gold. Everything looks good because these people are making more money than ever been in history. And then you have these workers who are poverty-stricken. They're working their fingers to the bone. They're doing everything they can to survive, and yet they're not making any headway. So that's kind of the Gilded Age in a nutshell between the captains of industry and the labor unions.